If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I am trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. Also, real quick before we get into the topic of this video, I wanted to quickly promote my MyGM series. I'm doing a MyGM series on the Atlanta Hawks on my second channel. There are now 4 episodes up. There's going to be a new one within the next couple of days. I traded for Bradley Beal. We're about halfway through the season now, so go give that one a watch if that type of content interests you. But today we're going to talk about Isaiah Thomas and if he has any potential to be in the NBA anymore, or if his career is just straight up over. Now, to summarize kind of his downfall, Isaiah Thomas got injured in the playoffs for the Boston Celtics, and then he eventually ended up being traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Kyrie Irving trade. Now, as we should all know, Isaiah was amazing in his last year in Boston. He was putting up nearly 30 points per game as a player who is no taller than 5'9", and he was doing it on incredible efficiency, especially considering his size. The dude was shooting 63% true shooting percentage as a 5'8" player. Like, that's just absurd. After that, he gets traded to Cleveland, and it did not go well because I believe it was a hip injury. It was really hindering his game, as well as the fact that he just was not a good fit in Cleveland. So he was traded to LA, played 17 games there, didn't play really any better there. Then he signed with the Denver Nuggets, did not get to play much there because by the time he was ready to come back, their rotation was set and the team was better than people expected. And then he got a real shot this year with Washington, who needed some extra offense, with Bradley Beal being really their only go-to offensive option. And with that opportunity, he averaged 12 points and 4 assists in 23 minutes of action, which was 18 points per game per 36. And he shot 41% from 3, but he also shot 40.5% from 2, which was not good. His overall field goal percentage was 41%, and his overall true shooting percentage was 53%. So Isaiah was putting up a decent volume of points in the minutes he was playing on okay enough efficiency considering the amount of threes that he was taking, but overall, for the defensive negative that he wasn't really helping all that much, especially on a bad Wizards team. So he was traded to the Clippers in I believe it was a 3-team deal or something like that, where the Wizards got back Jerome Robinson, and then they released Isaiah Thomas, and he has not been signed. Now, as for why he has not been signed, and no, it's not because of the virus. There's been plenty of time since he has been released, so he had plenty of time to be signed before the season shut down. The reason really is Isaiah Thomas at this point seems to be decently okay efficient, but not all that efficient, scoring punch off of the bench. However, he also is a massive, and I mean massive, liability on the defensive end. At 5'7" to 5'8" to 5'9" at the max, Isaiah could try his absolute hardest and he would still be a negative on defense because he's just way too small. But let's look at what he is good at and what he could potentially make up for, how he could make up for some of the issues he has to come back to the NBA. Now, as I said, 41% from 3 on 5 attempts this year in Washington, that is very good. The fact that he is putting up 19 points per game per 36 is very good. So he scores in a pretty good volume, and he did so with pretty good shooting. The issue that's come with Isaiah's injury is that his ability to attack the basket and finish at the basket has gotten substantially worse. His field goal percentage at the rim was 59% in his last year in Boston, and with Washington it's been 53%, which is a pretty decent enough drop off. just on the percentage alone, but he's also taking way less attempts. In his last year in Boston, 33% of his attempts were at the rim. In Washington, just 7% of his attempts were at the rim. So the dude is really not a threat attacking the basket like he was in Boston. It was quite insane how good he was attacking at the basket at the size he was, but that has not held up because of his injury, because he doesn't really have the explosiveness to get to the basket really fast, which was how he was able to finish so well, because he was able to just get to the rim faster than the defense could even realize he was there. But as for how he can clean some of this up, well, I think becoming a primarily three-point shooter, which is kind of what he did in Washington, would be a way for him to find a role on an NBA team, as well as taking more mid-range shots, really just being a jump shooter in general. However, his mid-range percentage has gone down quite a bit. He shot 51% in 2017, which is goddamn ridiculous. Like, that is elite mid-range shooting. That's like Michael Jordan, Chris Paul mid-range shooting. But he's shooting 12% worse from mid-range this year. And I think if he can start hitting those more, which I think he's capable of hitting because his actual athleticism didn't have much to do with his mid-range capability, I think that would help make him more efficient. That and more three-point shooting. Like, the guy was shooting 5 threes and 6 2-pointers. I think it should be more like 7 threes and like 3 2-pointers. Something like that. Now, with all that said, what teams could potentially find interest in the player that he could be? Because I still think the guy has potential to be a scoring punch. As long as the personnel is there to make up for the defense, it's possible for Isaiah to be a positive still in my mind. Now, ironically, the best team that I think would be for Isaiah Thomas, that I think would be mutually beneficial, would be the Boston Celtics, because they need a scoring punch off of the bench. They have some great scoring in their starting lineup, and because of their rotation, they're able to maintain pretty good scoring, but another punch and another three-point shooter is especially something that this team has needed. It's been felt for a while by a lot of Celtics fans and by me that the Celtics could use some extra shooting off of the bench. And really, they could just use some extra bench presence, period, because their bench unit is not very good. And I think the reason why this would be best for Isaiah is because I think it goes understated how much Brad Stevens' system really helped Isaiah in Boston. I think that system is like 40% of the reason that he was so amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, Isaiah Thomas was a good player before this. He was an all-star before this season, averaging 22 points and 6 assists. However, I think that 22 points and 6 assists at his peak was really more the player he was, generally speaking, than the 29 and 6 that he got the next year. Like, I think the season prior was the more realistic expectation for Isaiah going forward, presuming that the injury was not going to be a hindrance. That 29 point per game season, I'm not denying that he did it, but I also don't think that's something he was going to be able to maintain for a long time. But I think Brad Stevens' system allowed him to put up such ridiculous box score numbers because the dude had him with a spread pick and roll when he had the ball, and when he didn't, the guy had a lot of sets to get him open for his threes. The guy shot 9 3-pointers a game in that season, shooting 38%. That kind of thing would be very helpful for Isaiah. I think Brad Stevens' system would allow Thomas to still be an effective player in the system in Boston. Now, there might be a question of would Isaiah Thomas be hesitant to sign a contract with Danny Ainge, especially being how petty of a person Isaiah Thomas has shown himself to be. Well, yes, probably, but he's also not in the position to turn down any contracts in the NBA. As for some other teams, the Bulls could use some offense. Please stop saying, oh, they have too many guards. Well, really, only 2 of them are good. 3 if you're counting Chris Dunn. So I'm fine getting another guard, although I don't think I'd want Isaiah because, well, as I'm about to say, I don't really believe in him. The Raptors, they do kind of have 2 short guards that are a big part of their rotation, so I don't know if they'd want another one, but Isaiah would fit there. Outside of that, I think Kyle Lowry can play the 2, so that would work. The Sixers, they need some shooting, like definitely need some shooting, And I think that's a great fit as well because they have plenty of defense to make up for Isaiah Thomas, and they also need scoring punches off of the bench as well. I think he would be a pretty damn good fit with the Sixers. The Lakers, they could use some extra perimeter creation, but I doubt that happens, especially with how poorly Isaiah worked out with LeBron previous. The Jazz point guard play has been suspect, with Mike Conley really struggling this year and Emmanuel Mudiay being their backup point guard. He's mediocre. So I think Isaiah Thomas could be viewed as a decent player there, especially because the offense outside of Mitchell and Bogdanovich is pretty suspect as well. The Mavs don't have many creators outside of Luka. They could view Isaiah Thomas as a guy who could fill that role, but those are really the only teams that I looked at that it makes any kind of sense to sign Isaiah. Now, do I think he will be back in the NBA eventually? Well, yes. But I also don't think it's going to be for all that long. Unfortunately, I don't think his defense is worth his offense. He is a great shooter, but I don't know that his shooting is worth the massive defensive negative that he will bring. So there's plenty of other shooters available that are not going to be a huge hole in their defense. So honestly, I think he'll get a few contracts. I think he'll continue to put up decently efficient, like 10, 12, 13 points per game, and he's not really going to be a part of any good teams. There's a chance bad teams will sign him for some scoring punch, but I don't think Isaiah is going to be making a big impact on good teams, and because of that, I imagine he's going to be spending a good couple of years overseas, where he's probably going to average 35 points per game, because that's what happens with players like him. But I don't see him being in the NBA. I'm not saying it's impossible, because he could be a positive player again, especially under really good circumstances. Like, I think if he signed with the Sixers or Celtics and he was utilized properly, he could be a positive player. But as of right now, I do not see it happening. So that's Isaiah Thomas, and if his career is over, I hope not. I hope he can recover from his injury and he's still an all-star level player, but I also just don't see that happening, and I really don't see him being in the NBA for much longer, but I hope that's not the case. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.